Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Okay. So tonight we are going to continue on to our next chapter, chapter 7. And again, what I'm going to look at here in chapter 7 are the three areas you need to know to be able to do your homework properly and to do well on your chapter test. Okay, at the end of the 3 week period. In 3 weeks, we'll have our chapter 7 exam. Um, by the way, most everyone did well on the chapter 6 exam. Um, I a few of you had some issues with the preterite tense. Again, these are things you need to familiarize yourself with. And there were some questions where they wanted you to conjugate the verb into the preterite or the simple past tense. Again, stem and ending. And we had some irregular verbs there. It wasn't a lot of material, but make sure you're familiar with the preterite tense and you can form it. It is not that difficult. It's the simple past in Spanish. Um, let's see. Also, when taking the chapter test, just be careful. Sometimes the questions are worded and they'll say uh, which is the least likely answer. They don't necessarily want the best answer. Some There was one question on there that you just had to be careful. Read the question before you answer. But basically, I thought that the chapter 6 test was fairly straightforward, fairly easy. I had gone over the vocabulary. That's a major part of your chapter exams. Some of you didn't seem to be so familiar with your vocabulary. But if you had taken time to familiarize yourself with the vocabulary, familiarize yourself with the grammar, in this particular case, chapter 6, it was the preterite tense, and you read through carefully, your questions, it was not that difficult of an exam. Okay, so let's start chapter 7. And the theme is Los recuerdos y la nostalgia, memories and nostalgia. Basically, this chapter will deal with celebrations and holidays. Uh, how do we say birthday? Okay. How do we say wedding? What is the word for a baptism? What's the word for Christmas, Easter, etc.? So we're going to familiarize ourselves with various holidays and celebrations. Many of these you probably already know. And so we'll start off with the comunicación section. So we'll look at comunicación or some idiomatic ways of speaking. These are very simple. I'll go through them. You'll be tested on them. There's nothing really deep in this particular section, but they're good phrases to be aware of in Spanish. Okay. So we'll look at the comunicación section, and then we'll go to vocabulary. I'll go through some of that. And then finally, we'll jump to section 3, estructura, or grammar. What grammar do we need to know for chapter 7? So let's take a look. Okay, so let's see here. We want to go to the first area of comunicación, and this is on page 197. Okay, and what is the expression? Well, we're going to be talking about celebrations, holidays. And one of the questions someone might ask you is, did you have a good time? Well, how might you express it? How would you say, I had a good time? Okay, and that's really what this is all about here. So what we're learning here is, it says, lo, one second, let me see here. So it says, comunicación, lo pasé bien. So the phrase is pasar, to pass, it's an adverb, pasar lo bien. Pasar lo bien. That's the infinitive. It means to literally spend it well, or to have a good time. So if I want to say I had a good time, I would detach the lo from the end of the infinitive, and now I would say yo lo pasé bien. The lo is the it, okay? That's the good time you're talking about. Literally, you want to say I passed it or I spent it well. Yo lo pasé bien. Remember, your direct object pronoun always comes before the conjugated verb. So it would be, to say that I spent it well or I had a good time, is yo lo pasé bien. And there it is in the preterite tense. It's an AR verb, so it's yo lo pasé bien or lo pasé bien. Okay. Now, what is the question? How much you ask somebody, did you have a good time? You could ask them, ¿Cómo lo pasaste? ¿Cómo lo pasaste tú? Literally, how did you spend it? And then if you had a good time, you would say, lo pasé bien. All right. Okay. So let's take a look here. It says here, ¿Cómo lo pasaron bien los estudiantes? So, did the students have a good time? And then each student uh, will response, okay? Whether they had a good time or not. Okay, now, so again, the signature question might be, ¿Cómo lo pasaste? Okay. Did you have a good time? If you did, you would say, Yo lo pasé bien or lo pasé bien. Now, what they want you to see here is there are other ways to respond. Okay. So if you look at Paso Dos, they give you other ways to say to have a good time. And I want to go over 3 columns here. There it is, pasar lo bien or pasar la bien. So the it when can either be lo or la. Generally, the way I always hear it is a lo, como lo pasaste, but you could say como la pasaste. Okay, how did you spend it? Did you have a good time? It could either be masculine or feminine. Um, you could say, instead of bien, you could use divertido. Divertido means fun. So pasar la or pasar lo divertido means to spend it fun, or it basically means pasarlo, pasarla bien. It's just another way of saying it. You could say pasarlo, pasarla rico also. But the most common way to say it is pasarlo bien or pasarla bien. Okay. Finally, uh, in in addition to pasarlo, pasarla bien, you can use the verb disfrutar. That means to enjoy. So you might want to ask someone, uh, ¿disfrutaste la fiesta anoche? Did you enjoy the party last night? Or divertirse. It's reflexive. Okay, we had reflexive verbs, I believe, in 101. Divertirse is to have a good time, and it's used reflexively. I'm having a good time is yo me divierto. You're having a good time, tú te diviertes. So you can also use divertirse. It is reflexive, and uh, if you want to put it in the preterite tense, because we're asking, did you have a good time? You would ask somebody in the to form, ¿te divertiste en la fiesta? Did you have a good time at the party? Or ¿disfrutaste la fiesta? Would be another way. Or ¿lo pasaste bien en la fiesta? So I don't want to spend too much time on this. There'll be a few questions on it. It's very straightforward. And then what I would like to do is draw your attention to the little box here on page 198 again, and it just synthesizes out what I just went over. So let's take a look at the box. To say you had a good time in Spanish, use pasarlo or pasarla bien, disfrutar, to enjoy, or divertirse, to have a good time. If you look at the verb divertir, it's an IR verb, and it's related to the word diversion, okay? So, and it's used reflexively. So, anoche yo me divertí. Last night I had a good time. Okay. What else? So here's a few questions again, or this would show you how to use it. Here somebody responds, Lo pasé muy bien de vacaciones. I had a good time on vacation. And then they say, ¿Y tú and you? And then the person responds, Sí, me divertí mucho en las montañas. Yes, I had a good time in the mountains. And then they ask, ¿A dónde fuiste tú? Where did you go? A la playa. Okay. And let's move on. So I think that I don't want to belabor this much anymore. Make sure you're familiar with this. There will be a few questions on this. Let's move to the second part of comunicación. All right, give me a second here. If, yeah, okay. One second. See. Here we go. So This is the second part of comunicación. So again, these are idiomatic ways of speaking. This is very simple stuff. It will be on your exam, but let's just take a quick look at it. How do you congratulate someone? What is the theme of the chapter again? It has to do with parties, birthdays, major life occasions like a wedding, right? A birthday, and so a graduation. So you might want to be able to congratulate somebody. So here are your terms, okay? So let's take a look at this box at the top, at the pardon that interruption. So let's take a look at the top of page 200, and let's look at some of these phrases. Okay, so to say congratulations, how do we say? There's different ways. Felicitaciones, felicidades, or enhorabuena. There it is. Okay, so let's take a look at some how we might want to use it. It says here, voy a graduarme. So we have a life occasion, a celebration, a graduación, a graduation. And what does it say? Yo voy a graduarme. I'm going to graduate. Notice it's used reflexively. Yo voy a graduarme de la universidad en mayo. So I'm going to graduate from the university in May. So how would you say congratulations to somebody? Felicitaciones. You could say felicidades or enhorabuena. Sometimes this is expressed with the verb felicitar. So you can use the verb to congratulate, like I congratulate you. Well, the verb to congratulate is an adverb, felicitar. So I congratulate you would be, let's take a look. It says, en agosto, em, empiezo, excuse me, en agosto empiezo, I begin a trabajar de psicólogo escolar. So in August, I'm going to begin working as a school psychologist. Now, you want to say congratulations, but using the verb felicitar, you could say, if you're using tú with the person, yo te felicito. I congratulate you. Yo te felicito. If you use usted, it's a man. Yo lo felicito. A woman, yo la felicito. Okay. Or we congratulate you. Nosotros te felicitamos. Okay. Now, what if you want to give condolences? Just on the other side, you would want to be able to say, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry is simply lo siento. And many of you probably already know this. So that is it for comunicación. Now, let's see if we can get to the vocabulario. We're going to be talking about holidays, right? We're going to be, so it would be los días festivos, or feriados, holidays, celebraciones, celebrations. You know, is it Christmas? Is it Easter? Familiarize yourself with this vocabulary. Most of you have probably been exposed to a lot of it. Review it. Okay. Okay. So let's take a look. Let's look at some of these terms that have to, and so this is vocabulary that has to do with celebrations, holidays, or things that are done during a celebration. Do you give gifts? Is there a toast with champagne? So let's take a look. So the word for a toast, and excuse me, let me hop back here. The word for a toast is el brindis. Un brindis, okay? Hacer un brindis is a toast. Like you might do a brindis in a wedding, una boda. What is the word for birthday? El cumpleaños. El cumpleaños. You might have a toast, un brindis, and un cumpleaños. What about a farewell party, a going away party? It's a despedida. Despedir is to say goodbye or farewell. The word for party, you should all know, la fiesta. At a party, particularly a cumpleaños or maybe a celebration like Christmas, there will be gifts. What's the word for a gift? El regalo. El regalo. Um, a life celebration you might have is a bautizo, a baptism when a child is born, or when people marry, it's called la boda, wedding. And finally, la graduación, graduation. Okay. Take a look at this section here at the bottom of 201. This will be on your exam. It's very simple. There are little cultural notes. I'll ask a few questions about them. I'm letting you know beforehand. And it says, Conéctate al mundo hispano. And there's some cultural things they often ask about. And they talk here about the idea of you may have a long weekend. And when you have a long weekend, it often becomes un puente, like a bridge. And so, what is that? Well, if you have, let's say, and it tells you right here, if you have a dia festivo, if you have a holiday on a Thursday, right? Um, a lot of times you'll be given off Friday, and then there's Saturday and Sunday. So that long weekend where where there's a holiday starting on a Thursday that you have off, they'll give you off Friday, and that is called un puente. That's all they're letting you know. Okay. And where you see el puente in the United States a lot is on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is always on a Thursday. A puente happens when a holiday is on a Thursday. And so that would be called a puente. Okay, so that long holiday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is un puente. So when you have a long weekend like that. Okay, let's see. Let's look at some more terms while we're here. A very important day for Latin America, because it generally is in most Spanish-speaking countries, because they are Christian, would be El Día de los Reyes Magos. Okay, Three Kings Day, the 6th of January. Another important time would be uh, the prior to Lent would be or at the end of Lent is El Carnaval, Carnival. And then a coming out party. This is really for young ladies when they turn 15. There will be a coming out party, kind of marking their passage into adulthood. There's often an elaborate party. The young lady, the 15-year-old, would dress up, and people would come well dressed, her friends, and there would be a lot of dancing and good food. Okay, and that is called La Fiesta de Quinceañera. The quinceañera actually means the person who turns 15. Semana Santa is Holy Week, okay? And that's the week up through including Easter. So there's Holy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday would be Easter. Well, La Semana Santa, that whole week, is very important in the Spanish-speaking world. In many parts of the Spanish-speaking world, they get the whole week off. And there are oftentimes businesses are closed down. So if you're traveling, make sure you're aware of that. But it's also a great time to visit a Spanish-speaking country because there's a lot of pageants and parades and the like. Okay, in the streets. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Not sure kind of what's happened here. Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, what else? So I'm kind of going through these holidays. Again, you can do this on your own, but El Día de la Independencia, okay, Independence Day, El Día de Muertos, okay, that is the Mexican holiday, the Day of the Dead, on November 1st, when in certain parts of Mexico, people go to the cemeteries, they prepare food, and it's kind of a very festive affair where people will come to the grave of one of their ancestors and celebrate that person with food and memories and all. Okay. Finally, we have Hanukkah, Noche Buena, y la Navidad. So Noche Buena is Christmas Eve, la Noche Buena, and then la Navidad is Christmas. And then finally, we have Noche Vieja, New Year's Eve, and El Año Nuevo, New Year's. So I wanted to point out some of those holidays. Please look through this information, make sure you are familiar with them. And again, here's some good vocabulary. Desfiles are parades. When might you have a desfile? Well, Semana Santa. You might have a religious procession, or in El Día de Independencia, fuegos artificiales, fireworks. You might have a brindis con champán at a boda, at a wedding. Champán is champagne. The word for Easter is Pascua. Okay. Um, During Halloween, you might don or put on disfraces, a disguise or mask. Okay. And let's see. Okay. So I think that is it about it with the vocabulary. Now let's go on to estructura or grammar. Okay. So what is our grammar in this unit? Well, we're going to use, or we're going to learn another form of the past tense. Last unit, chapter 6, we learned the simple past or preterite tense, and we learned how to form it, stem and ending. We learned also a few irregular forms. Well, now we're going to learn another type of past tense, and it's called the imperfect. Okay, it's called the imperfect. And there it is on page 205. Now, again, what your book does is they'll present, when they teach grammar, they'll give you the grammar in context. They'll give you a reading with the grammar without explaining what it is first. So they give you a passage here using the imperfect tense, and then they'll go into actividades analíticas. And that's where I want to jump to that, because I want to know, what is the imperfect tense? What do they mean about it? And this is all on page 205, or it starts on page 205. So let's take a look. The imperfect tense, and let's see what it says here in number 1. The imperfect is used when you want to portray an event as being in the past, but it is not important exactly when the event started or if it ended. So it's you want to show a continuing action, something that was going on in the past. And you don't want to say necessarily that it ended at such and such a time. You just want to, it's almost like you're painting a picture of something, an event that went on in the past, and you're describing the scene. And you don't care when the thing began or ended, but you just want to relate that this was something that was happening in the past. So let's take a look at the imperfect tense. So what the imperfect tense means in English would be used to. So for example, I used to live, or I used to go, or they used to study Spanish when they were young. That's one way we translate it. Also, it can mean I was studying. They were studying. So it's was, were, and then the ing form of the verb. Okay, that's how we translate it. Now let's take a look at it. So the verbs you saw above are in the imperfect tense. The imperfect is used when you want to portray an event as being in the past and you don't care when it actually began or ended. Let's take a look at a few sentences here. De niño. De niño you often will use with the imperfect tense. Get used to it. It means de niño means as a child, almost when I was a child, as a child. And if you're a female, you would say de niña. When I was a child, so de niño, Carlos vivía en Honduras. Okay, so there's your verb vivir, to live. Carlos used to live in Honduras, or Carlos was living in Honduras. Let's look at the next one. Los Mayas, the Mayans, we have the verb comer, we have it in the imperfect. The Mayans used to eat or were eating a lot of corn. Okay. All right. Cuando estaba en Madrid, Julieta. When Julieta was being in Madrid or used to be in Madrid, trabajaba con su tía. She used to work with her uncle, or she was working with her uncle. That's in perfect tense, and that's how we translate it into English. And now we'll see how to form it. Okay. As you know, in Spanish, verbs, there's only 3 types of verbs. They either end in AR, ER, or IR in the unconjugated form. That's called the infinitive. Hablar, comer, vivir. Okay? Those are 3 examples of an AR verb, an ER verb, and an IR verb. So, to conjugate a verb in the imperfect tense, pay attention, it's very simple. First, we get the stem of the verb, and then we add a special ending, and those endings you have to memorize. We all know how to get the stem, but you need to memorize the endings. And each of the subject pronouns, the subject of your sentence, requires a specific ending, and you just need to get used to this. So let's start it. So if we have the verb hablar, to speak, what's the stem? It's habla. I drop the AR, right? And now I put on my magical endings. So it would be yo hablaba. I put ABA on the end. Tú hablabas. I put ABAS on the end. If you recall, the tú conjugation usually has an S in it, as when we learned it in the present tense. What about the él, ella, or usted form? It's going to be the stem habla and then a aba ending. It conjugates just like the yo form. What about nosotros? It's habla. Okay. And so it's going to be habla and then habamos is what we add on the end. And notice it's accentuated on the first day. Nosotros hablábamos. Forget about vosotros. We are not going to use that, but we will learn ellos, and it will be, the ending will be hablan. So it'll be habla, and the ending is hablan. It's going to be A-B-A-N is the ending. I don't know why the book doesn't give it to you, but it's A-B-A-N. That's the ellos and ustedes ending. Okay. So what does yo hablaba mean? It means I used to speak or I was speaking. What does tú hablabas mean? You used to speak or you were speaking. Okay. Hablábamos, we used to speak or we were speaking. Ellos hablaban, they used to speak or they were speaking. All right, so make sure you know those endings. Okay, aba for yo, abas for tú, aba for él, ella, and usted, habamos for nosotros, and haban for ellos. Now, comer and vivir. We have an ER and an IR verb. How do we form the imperfect? Well, the good news is ER and IR verbs have exactly the same endings. So we get the stem of the verb and we put the endings on. What are the ER, IR imperfect endings? Here they are. So for comer, the stem is com. So for yo, it's ia. Yo comía. The ending is ia. I used to eat. I was eating. Tu is ias. There's that S again. I was eating or I used to eat. What about el, usted? It's ia, just like yo. Él comía. Usted comía. You used to eat. You were eating. What about nosotros? It's going to be íamos. There it is, right there in the IR. Íamos. Nosotros comíamos. We used to eat, and there's an accent on the I. And then finally for ellos, it's going to be ian. I-A-N. Ellos comían. What about vivir? The same thing as comer. It's got the ia ending. So the stem is viv. Yo vivía. I used to live, or I was living. Tu vivías. It's exactly like comer. You were living, or you used to live. Él vivía. He used to live, or he was living. Vivíamos. Nosotros vivíamos. We used to live or were living. And finally, ellos vivían. They used to live or were living. Okay. Let's move on here. So if you look at number 3, there is a chart, okay, and they've done the conjugations for you. Again, AR verbs, you're going to get the stem of the verb and put aba endings on. For ER, IR verbs, you're going to get the stem of the verbs and put ia endings on. All right? And make sure you know which subject pronoun takes which ending. It's very, very simple. Okay. 4 is important, just because these verbs are so common. The imperfect is one of the easiest tenses to form. It's for AR verb, stem and aba ending. For ER and I verb, it's stem and ia ending. Luckily, there are very few irregular verbs in the imperfect. There are only 3. That's it. Okay, so these are irregular. The verb to go, ir. The verb to be, ser, and the verb to see, ver. They are irregular. Just learn these, okay? So yo iba means I used to go or I was going. Tu ibas, you used to go or you were going. Él iba, he used to go or he was going. Íbamos, we were going or we used to go. And finally, ellos iban, they used to go or they were going. Era, yo era, I used to be or was being. Tu eras, you used to be. Éramos, we used to be. Ellos eran. And finally, ver, it's irregular. I used to see or I was seeing is yo veía. You used to see or you were seeing is tú veías. We used to see is nosotros veíamos, or so that would be we were seeing or we used to see. So take a look at the irregulars, all right? And let's take a look at the sentence here, just to get you familiar, to feel a little more comfortable with the imperfect tense. Íbamos a muchas fiestas. So what does that mean? Íbamos, we used to go, all right, or to many parties cuando yo era niño, when I was a child. If you're female, cuando yo era niña. You could also say, de niño íbamos a muchas fiestas. As a child, I used to go to a lot of parties, or we used to go to a lot of parties. Okay. Veías. Did you used to watch this television program every day? Okay. All right. Remember the phrase hay. There is, there are. Hay 5 personas en la clase. There are 5 people in the class. So what if you wanted to say there were 5 people in the class? Okay. You would say había 5 personas en la clase. Okay. So there was a Mayan building in this place. Había un edificio Maya en este lugar. So if for example, you're walking through some ruins, the tour guide might point to the ruins like above. And if there had been a building there, but it's just ruins now, he could say, había un edificio Maya en este lugar. There used to be a Mayan building here. Okay. Let's take a look. Okay, so we have learned a new tense. Make sure you can form this. This is much easier than the preterite, stem, and ending. The AR verbs have their special endings, aba. The ER and IR verbs have their special endings, ia. And then you have 3 irregular verbs like ir, ver, and ser that you need to commit to memory. Okay. Let's go to the next area of estructura or grammar. This is very simple stuff. This is on page 210. So we're jumping ahead now to page 210. You need to know the indirect objects and indirect object pronouns. Last unit, we learned direct objects and direct object pronouns. Now we want to learn the indirect object pronouns. So what is an indirect object? First of all, for our purposes, indirect objects are generally going to be people, and it's something that is done for somebody else. Okay, so let's take a look. The words me, le, les, and para empezar above, okay, are the indirect object pronouns. So there are your indirect object pronouns. Add these words to the chart of the indirect object pronouns here. So an indirect object pronoun means either to or for somebody else. Something you're doing to or for somebody else, okay? So to me is me. So the first indirect object pronoun is me, me, okay? To you, the to form, to or for you is te, okay? So I might say, I'm giving you the picture. I'm giving the direct object is the picture, but it's giving to you, or I'm doing it for you. So the indirect object pronoun is te. All right? To him, or to her, or to it, or to you is le, L-E. So le can mean to. I'm giving him the book, okay? Yo le doy el libro. I'm giving him the book. I'm giving her the book. Yo le doy el libro. Le also means to her. I'm giving you the book, usted. Yo le doy el libro. So le means to you with usted, to him if it's a male, or to her. All right. I give you the book if I'm using the to form. Yo te doy el libro. I give myself the book. Yo me doy el libro. Okay, to me. So those are your indirect object pronouns, me, te, and le. What about the plural ones? Us, nos. To us or for us is nos. Okay, I give us the books. Yo nos doy el libro. I give us the books. Forget about vosotros, and I give them the book. Yo les doy el libro. Or ustedes, if it's more than one you, yo les doy. So les can mean to you or to them. Yo les doy los libros. Okay, so let's take a look at 2 for a little more clarification. An indirect object is the person or thing. For our cases, it's going to be more of a person. Is the person that receives something from the action of the verb. In English, it is often indicated by the preposition to. For instance, in the sentence, Mary gave the book to John, the indirect object is John. Okay, so Mary gave the book. What was given? What's the direct object? It's the book. But to whom or for whom was it given? The to or for, when you answering that question, that's your indirect object. Okay. And so Mary gave the book to John. So to whom or for whom was it given? It was given to John. John becomes the indirect object. Here's Bill sent a letter to his parents. Again, the indirect object here is to his parents. His parents is the indirect object. The direct object is the letter. Diana explained the problem to her friends. Again, the indirect object is to her friends. It was done to or for her friends. And the direct object is the problem. But right now, we're only interested in the indirect object. Okay, so let's take a look at number 3. In Spanish, an indirect object is usually indicated by the preposition a, which means to. In general, an indirect object pronoun is used whenever there is an indirect object. So what they're saying here, it's a little different than in English. In English, I might say, in English, we would say, I'm giving my dad a hug. Okay? I'm giving is yo doy un abrazo a mi papá. I'm giving my dad a hug. But in Spanish, it tells you whenever you have an indirect object, who's the indirect object here? It's the father. You have to use the corresponding indirect object pronoun. Spanish is redundant. In English, you would never say, I give a hug to my father to him. You don't need the to him. It's understood. But in Spanish, you have to have the indirect object pronoun. What is the indirect object pronoun that stands for father? A mi papá. It's le, to him. So how would we say it? Yo le doy un abrazo a mi papá. Does everybody see that? So it's kind of redundant. In English, we would just say, doy un abrazo a mi papá. But in Spanish, once you have named an individual, whether it's your father, whether it's Bob or Mary, or Bob and Mary, you then have to insert the indirect object pronoun. Where does the indirect object pronoun go? Where is it placed? It's just like the direct object pronoun. It always comes before the conjugated verb. Always. Nothing can get between that indirect object pronoun and the conjugated verb. So, yo le doy un abrazo a mi papá is the way I say I give a hug to my father. Here's another one. You want to say, mom gives kisses to her friend. Okay? So in English, you would just say, mi mamá da besos a sus amigas. Not in Spanish. You have to say, my mother gives kisses to her friends, to them. So how do you say, what is the indirect object for a sus amigas? It's les. So where does the les go? Les is an indirect object pronoun. The indirect object pronoun always goes where? Immediately before the conjugated verb. So, mi mamá les da besos a sus amigas. Again, Spanish is a bit redundant when we use indirect object pronouns. In English, in these sentences, we wouldn't use them, but in Spanish, you have to. All right, indirect object pronouns differ in this way from direct object pronouns, which replace the direct object. Indirect object pronouns may also be used on their own when the context makes it clear whom the pronoun refers to. So you can have a sentence where you don't name the person, like, but you could just say, I give them the money, or I gave him the food. So as long as the context clarifies. So let's take a look. Ellos son mis vecinos. They are my neighbors. Vecinos is neighbors. Now, here's doy, I give. So what? I'm giving the newspaper. I'm giving them the newspaper every morning. Yo les doy el periódico cada mañana. I know immediately that the les refers to them, my friends. I'm giving them the paper every day. Mis amigos me dan un abrazo. My friends are giving me uh, uh, are giving me a hug on my birthday. Okay. Again, you're going to be tested on the indirect object pronoun. You're just going to get a sentence and you're going to have to fill in the indirect object pronoun. So make sure you know what the indirect object is. Is it Mary? Is it Bob? Is it to you, usted? Or is it to you, tú? Is it to us, nos? Is it to them, les? Just get yourself familiar with these pronouns. So let's take a look. In number 4, indirect objects are very frequent, are used very frequently with the verb dar. So whenever you have the verb to give, you'll often be giving something to somebody or for somebody. Okay, so dar. They are also used with the verb decir. You might want to tell somebody something or speak to somebody about something, or pedir is to request something from somebody or ask somebody, preguntar somebody something, or show. Enseñar could be the teacher shows somebody, or regalar, to give away something to somebody. So let's take a look. You want to tell somebody, I tell you the truth. Okay, so you're going to want to use the to form. So how do you say I tell? It's yo digo or digo. I tell you it's the truth. So how do I say for to? It's te. Te means to you. And where do we always place the indirect object pronoun? Immediately before the conjugated verb. So, te digo que es la verdad. I'm telling you it's the truth. What if you speak something to somebody? Okay, so él nos habló de su viaje a Lima. He told us about his trip to Lima. To us, and nos is your indirect object pronoun. Where do we place it? Always immediately before the conjugated verb. Pedir is to request or ask for. Le pido un café. Okay, so le pido un café. I ask him for a coffee. Again, it could also mean I ask her for a coffee. They don't qualify whether it's Mary or Bob. But le pido un café could mean I ask him for a coffee. I ask her for a coffee. It could even mean I ask you for a coffee. We need a little more clarification there. To if you ask somebody a question, okay, say you want to ask them a question, yo or tú les preguntaste, there's your preterite, did you ask them? ¿Dónde está la universidad? Les preguntaste, did you ask them? You're going to use the indirect object pronoun, and in this case, les shows you mean to them. Miguel me enseñó. Enseñó is the preterite form, the LA form. So Miguel showed me. Me enseñó su nueva casa. And finally, regalar, to give away, like a birthday gift. Regalar. Regalaron is the ellos form. They gave us a libro. Ellos nos regalaron un libro. They gave to us. All right. Just as you saw with the direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns can be placed before the main verb. So they're really, if there's one verb and only one verb in the sentence, they must go before the conjugated verb. You don't have any choice. All right. But if there is more than one verb, say you have a conjugated verb and a verb infinitive, now you can put the indirect object pronoun before the conjugated verb, le voy a preguntar algo, or if you have a second verb, and the second verb is a infinitive, preguntar, you can attach it to the end. The object pronoun be attached to the end. So voy a preguntarle algo. So both those sentences mean the same thing. Again, they don't clarify if the le means to him, her, or you, if we're using usted. Okay, let me see. Finally, I did want to point out, if you guys recall learning the verb gustar, if you remember, we did not use the subject pronouns with it. We used the indirect object pronouns, the ones we just learned now. That's what you use with gustar. So I like is me gusta. You like with two is te gusta, not tu gustas, but te gusta. Remember this? He likes is le gusta. She likes le gusta. You like usted le. We like nos gusta, and they like is les gusta. So if you recall, these indirect object pronouns were used with the verb gustar. Just a little review. Okay. And let me see what else we have here. Finally, we'll get to the last area of estructura or grammar. This is the third area, and this is, okay, this is on page 214. Pronouns used after prepositions. So all I want you to know here is if you have a preposition, and what are our prepositions? Let's look at our prepositions just to get ourselves going. Let's look at 214 under actividades analíticas. Okay, based on what you saw above, complete the following chart of singular pronouns after prepositions. Okay, so what are prepositions? Here they are. A, to, de, from, en, in, por, okay, by, para, for. What else? We have some other prepositions, sin, without, sobre, above. Are these coming back to you? Just basic prepositions. So how would you say to me, to you? How would you say from me, from him, from them? Okay, so if you have a preposition, what is the pronoun you're going to use after it? And these are pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And let's take a look and see what they are. Okay, so 1 second. Okay. Okay. So let's say we want to use para or de. Now, how would we say for me or from me in Spanish? What would the pronoun, the proper, it will be para or de mi. It's an MI with an accent mark on it, okay? De mi, all right? So for or from me. What if you want to say for you and use the to form? It will be para or de ti, okay? Okay. What if you want to say in me? Do you trust in me? En me, M-I. So for the preposition you use for me, that follows any preposition in Spanish will be mi with a accent mark on it. For to, the to form will be ti, para ti, a ti, de ti, from you. Everybody got this? Okay, and here they are in number 2. The pronouns me with the accent and ti may be thought of as specialized forms of yo and tu. They're only used when they're the object of a preposition. Okay, this is real simple. Me llevaban a la playa cada verano. They would take me to the beach every summer. Vamos a hablar de ti, not de tú, de ti. Let's talk about you. Tengo un regalo para ti. I have a gift for you, not para tú, but para ti. Okay. Now, this is very easy. The rest of this is simple, simple, simple. All the other pronouns, for him, for her, for you, usted, for us, okay, or for them or for you all, just use the subject pronoun. Okay, so let's take a look. To him is a él. Okay, to him. For him, para él. All right. What about for her? Para ella. A ella. Just use this simple old subject pronoun. What about usted? Para usted. A usted. De usted. You're going to just use the regular subject pronoun. What about nosotros? Use the regular subject pronoun. For us, para nosotros. From us, de nosotros. To us, a nosotros. And then they, a ellas, a ellos if they're masculine, and para ustedes. You just use the simple subject pronouns. Finally, 3 is very important. The preposition con does require, if you want to say with me or with you and you're using the to form, it has a very special form. Many of you may already know this. Just learn it. So, with me is conmigo, not con me, does not exist. It's conmigo. With you for the to form, it's contigo, not conti, but contigo. Please learn this. It's very simple. For all the other pronouns, with him would be con él, with her, con ella, with you, con usted. We just use the regular subject pronoun. If we want to say with us, it would be con nosotros, and with them, con ellos, con ellas, with you all, con ustedes. And here are a few more, again, prepositions. So, sin means without. No puedo vivir sin ti. I can't live without you if I'm using the to form. Sin ti. If I were using usted, it would be no puedo vivir sin usted. Okay? All right. En, another preposition. So I'll ask you to look through that. Finally, I just wanted to, they introduce this here at the end here on page 215. Remember I told you we just learned the indirect object pronouns, one lesson before this one. And I told you you always use the indirect object pronouns with gustar. Me, te, le, nos, and les. Well, these verbs here, encantar, to enchant, fascinar, to fascinate, importar, to be important to, interesar, to interest, molestar, to bother, and parecer, to appear to, you always use the indirect object pronouns with them. That's all. So, me encanta means I love it. Me fascina means it fascinates me. Me importa, it's important to me. Me interesa, it interests me. Me molesta, it bothers me. Me parece, it appears to me. Notice I use my indirect object pronouns. What if I want to say it it enchants him? I would say le encanta. It enchants her. Le encanta. It fascinates her. Le fascina. Or it fascinates him. Le fascina. It's important to us. Nos importa. It interests us. Nos interesa. So use your indirect object pronouns with these verbs. I don't know that you will be tested on that per se, but I just wanted to make mention of that. So I think we are done with today's lecture. This unit 7 has to do with holidays, celebrations, birthdays, baptisms, weddings, etc. A fiesta de quinceañera. So Christmas, Noche Buena, Christmas Eve. Make sure you're familiar with these holidays. You're familiar with some of the vocabulary surrounding holidays. And look at those expressions in comunicación. They're very simple, very straightforward. And then in terms of your grammar, know your indirect object pronouns, and know also that what are the pronouns we use after a preposition like de or para, okay? For me would be para mí, to me would be a mí, okay? For you, para ti, from you, de ti. Just make sure you're familiar. I think this is this unit is fairly straightforward, fairly simple. And again, make sure you can conjugate a verb in the imperfect tense. First of all, you know what it means. It's a form of the past. It means used to, was or were talking, okay, or used to talk. That's what it means. And make sure you conform it. If it's an AR verb, stem and aba endings. If it's an IR verb, stem and ia endings. Please, it's very easy to form these. And we had 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect. Make sure you're familiar with those. Okay, with that, I will say good evening.